Buffalo Bills general manager Brandon Beane said he does not have 30 first-round grades despite picking at number 30 overall. What does that mean for the Bills' draft strategy? We're going to break that down and more today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Well, folks, welcome in. Excited to break down Brandon Beane's pre-draft press conference, kind of dive into this thing and figure out what clues we can find about the Bills' draft strategy. And we also heard from Tre White and Josh Allen during the media session on Tuesday afternoon and got some clues about Tre White and his role in Buffalo and Josh Allen, what he's been up to this offseason, with some comments about Keon Coleman that are very fascinating about what he's been up to this offseason. I have a lot to break down there. So let's dive into it. And I do want to start with this Brandon Beane piece of the conversation. And every year he's asked, how many first-round grades do you have? And Brandon Beane said, we're picking 30 and not 30. And listen, no team in any draft has ever had 30 first-round grades. I would say most teams have under 20 first-round grades. Probably between 12 and 18, I think, would probably be a normal number of first-round grades to have. And so if you're picking at 30, it's very unlikely that you're going to get a true first-round talent. Now, listen, every team has different boards, and you could have one team that views a player as a first-round grade and others that think they're more of a middle-of-day-two guy, right? There could be a lot of variance in how these boards stack from team to team, and that's the way it should be. You know, you have different people with different criteria looking for different things. It's going to look different, just like it should across different draft analysts that you might look at their draft boards, and there's wide-ranging variance of where guys are ranked. And so that's pretty normal. But, of course, the Bills are picking 30. It's a first-round pick. You'd like to get a player worthy of the first round. And that can be challenging. And so Brandon Beane was asked, you know, does that complicate the Bills' draft strategy? And he said, well, no, you build the board for your team. It's mindful of what you need and your qualifications and what's important to you. He says, look, you move up when you're running out of players and you feel like you can get a guy that would make sense for the value of where you're picking. You move back when the value isn't there to stick and pick. And he said, I'm constantly talking to teams ahead of us, teams behind us, and we're just waiting for it to play out. And Brandon Beane did say, look, it can go a lot of different ways this year. It's more of an unusual draft in terms of predictability. And that certainly makes it challenging to sit at pick 30 and have an understanding of what's going to be there. But that's why you trust your board. That's why you do the assessments. You value players in certain ranges and you allow your board to make the decisions. And so I know there's a lot of thought that the Bills could move up, move back. And Brandon Beane said they would trade up if there's a player they love that fits a need and the value makes sense. So we're not any closer to knowing if the Bills are going to stick and pick, trade back, or trade up, but at least we have some feel for the dynamics in play based on what Brandon Beane said on Tuesday afternoon. Brandon Beane was asked what the strongest position in the draft is this year, and he said defensive line, inside and out. And I agree. When I looked at my top 100, and my big board is available, there's a link in today's show notes that will give you my Bills-specific big board. So you'll see my horizontal Bills draft board and my vertical rankings of all the players I scouted for this year's draft cycle. And if you go to my top 100 players, you will see 5 quarterbacks, 6 running backs, 5 tight ends, 12 wide receivers, 18 offensive linemen, 32 defensive linemen. The distribution there is 19 defensive ends, 13 D tackles, 3 linebackers, 14 corners, and 5 safeties. Well, what are the Bills' primary needs? D tackle, D end, corner. And that's where this draft is rich in talent, which is good, that you want what's available in the draft to align with what your team needs. And I think that sets up well for the Bills. Now, Beane did say that D-line, he came out and said D-line is the strongest position group in this draft. So does that mean they will lean into the depth of the class and maybe wait on that in the second round and use that first pick on a corner or something else? Maybe that was a little bit of a tease for that possibility, where he's already said, look, the strength of this draft is D-line. If they don't go D-line at 30, well, I told you the strength of the draft was D-line. We could probably wait on that. We don't think it's as strong at corner. We got to get that done now. And that's what your draft board should tell you to do, right? That's how it informs your decisions. When talking about the needs, Brandon Beane said they probably have more needs on defense, but they're always looking for depth on both sides and have to look at contracts down the road, guys with 1 year left. That's interesting, right? Been talking a little bit about Connor McGovern, 1 year left. David Edwards, starter, 1 year left. James Cook, starter, 1 year left. Daquan Jones, D-tackle, 1 year left. Matt Milano, starting linebacker, 1 year left. Joey Bosa, starter, 1 year left. Kind of gives you an idea, right? You got to get ahead of needs. I think that's smart. I think you should do that type of stuff. And so kind of fascinating to consider, not just what you feel is pressing right now, but be mindful of those needs that are coming. Staying on the lines, staying along the talking point of the defensive line, he was asked a question about Dwayne Carter and what position, they're kind of looking at him to play. And he said he likes Carter's versatility to play the 3-tech or the 1-tech, but they'll know more about where they'll have him once they build out their team through the draft. So that's a fascinating layer, because I've been really talking a lot about the need for a 1-tech, a nose tackle, to play with Daquan Jones and then succeed Daquan Jones. It's interesting that the Bills think there's a chance that Carter can be a 1, because I never really thought of him that way. I think his best, what he was best at in college was up the field penetration, pass rush. And what he was weak at was defending the run. And so is it a situation where they want to put some weight on him and play him at the 1? That's interesting. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to me. And so I think I kind of disagree with Beane here. I think you got to put players in the spot that makes the most sense from them and build your team accordingly. Got Dwayne Carter here hanging in the balance of, is he primarily going to be a 1 or a 3? Well, there's probably a weight difference that he's comfortable at either spot. So it's interesting that top 100 pick from last year is uncertain as to what his primary spot's going to be. I think he's a 3. Play him at the 3 and figure it out at the 1. So I see that one a little bit differently. On James Cook, said he's not here this week. Of course, voluntary workouts began on Monday, and James Cook's not there this week. He said it's not fair to say that it's because of the contract. He said there's been no changes in terms of those negotiations. He did point out that it's voluntary, and ultimately said he's confident that James Cook will be ready to go. On suspensions impacting the draft, of course, Michael Hoyt, Larry Ogunjobi suspended for 6 games. Brandon Beane said they will not allow that to impact their draft strategy. They're treating it like they're nicked up players that are going to miss 6 games. And then, of course, it was asked, look, you got 10 picks. Can 10 picks make the roster? And he said it's probably hard to have a class of 10 to make it. So we'll see how the Bills approach that, whether it is probably some trades up, maybe trading out of some picks, collecting picks for next year. I expect Brandon Beane to be pretty active in the trade front and that doesn't mean he won't trade back. I think he will, but then he would then use those extra picks to move up. I think there's a world where the Bills can move out of 30, potentially get a 3, and then use that ammo that he has in the 4th round and the 3rd round to move up strategically on day 2. So those are the clues that we got from Brandon Beane. I do want to continue this conversation on the other side of it by weaving together what he said about Tre White and his return to Buffalo and what Tre White said about his return to Buffalo to get an idea of what the role is going to be for Tre'Davious White in 2025. We're going to break that down and a whole lot more, so folks, be sure to stick with me. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. And I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. And those player props are really fun, from 3-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many different ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Plus, they've got NFL draft props over at FanDuel. I took advantage of some of those this morning. I'm not going to lie to you. So check it out over at FanDuel. Do not miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Buffalo businesses, it's time to register for the JP Morgan Corporate Challenge. This year's event is on Thursday, June 12th, and features a 3.5-mile course through Delaware Park, followed by a celebration with a DJ, lawn games, and a tented experience for you and your teammates. Walkers, joggers, and runners are all welcome. Whether you run for the love of it, for your company, or to build lasting bonds, this is your moment. Teams of 4 participants or more can register today. Registration closes on Tuesday, May 13th. 1 part run, 1 part party. The Corporate Challenge has earned its reputation as Buffalo's corporate social event of the year. So join us for great competition, teamwork, company pride, and a true sense of accomplishment. Go to www.jpmorganchasecc.com and choose Buffalo as your location to start your registration today. We'll see you on the course. All right, folks, let's get into this Tre White conversation. We heard from Brandon Beane on Tre White. We've heard Tre White on Tre White. And so I'm excited to break that down for you. One other note here. You guys are probably become pretty familiar with Kyle Krabs and I, my co-host on Locked On NFL Scouting, doing a live draft stream. That will happen again this year. We're going live Thursday night, 8 o'clock Eastern time, over on the Locked On NFL Scouting YouTube channel. So if you want to follow along with my analysis of the draft as it happens, get those live reactions to every pick, it'll be there for you Thursday night. Myself, Kyle Krabs, over on Locked On NFL Scouting. The YouTube channel there is where you can follow along. All right, let's get into this Tre White stuff. So Tre White back to Buffalo. We've talked about that, but now we've heard from him. And it was kind of cool, right, to see him back in the building. And I don't know, every time Tre White talks, it's interesting to me, and I always thoroughly enjoy his insight. And he came out and said, look, he's always wanted to spend his entire career with one team. It meant a lot to him to be able to come back. And he said right after the divisional round loss, of course, he was on the losing side playing for the Ravens. He started talking about how he wanted to come back to Buffalo. In fact, he came out and said that he told his agent, if you can't get Buffalo on the line, don't call me. So pretty clear what he wanted to do. And this is kind of unique that you've heard a guy like Tre'Davious White say that. Jordan Phillips has come out and said, look, it's Buffalo or bust. There's a lot of money out there to play football. And these guys want to be in Buffalo. That is not lost on me. I know that could feel a little numb to you. Maybe you don't always enjoy the players coming back, but it is such a statement of positivity about the infrastructure and the coaching and everything in place in Buffalo that player after player after player wants to come back. And again, I know that there's some people that are thumb their nose at that and they don't think much of it and they wish some guys wouldn't come back. But I think this is also the reality of where we're at. Brandon Beane is the longest tenured general manager the Buffalo Bills have ever had. And the previous 5 GMs lasted a little over 3 seasons on average. Beane's going into year 9. Your opportunity for this to happen is just certainly a lot more. But the fact that guys want to come back, think about it like this. Like, the team says, you know what? We got to cut you. We're not going to be able to get a deal done. We're moving on. And then they have to go play for some other team and then go back to the team. Like, that's a pretty big deal. I know that there's jobs that I've worked in the past that I have no interest in going back to under any terms. It's pretty cool. I hope that's not lost on you. Tre'Davious White also said that he told Taron Johnson that during the season last year, he said, if y'all win a Super Bowl without me, I'm getting an honorary ring. It's really cool. Like, you could see there's such a sense of pride from these guys. Even Micah Hyde coming back last year, coming back really just to be part of it, not to play. You're just literally on the practice squad. Micah Hyde, potential Bills Wall of Famer, coming back to just be on the practice squad, to be around it. That is cool. These guys have a deep sense of ownership in what's going on. Seeing the glow up, and they're committed. They want this thing, as bad as we do. So I loved hearing that. Brandon Beane said this on Tre'Davious White's return. He said, we're excited to have him back. He brings great experience. The film improved last year down the stretch. He said he's another year off from the injury. They have a lot of confidence in him. No promises were made. They're pulling for him, and they would love for him to win the starting job. Talked about Peanut Tillman coming to Carolina when him and McDermott were at Carolina. The 2015 season, Tillman was 34 years old, was a starter for them on that Super Bowl team in 2015. Interesting parallel. Tre White's not that old. He just turned 30, I think, in January. So younger. And talked about, hey, when you're that football smart and you have this level of familiarity with what's going on here, even if you have some athletic decline, your instincts and your football IQ and your familiarity can really help and go a long way. Beane was asked about the idea of Tre White transitioning to safety. Beane said, it's not where we're at or looking to go. Wouldn't put it past Tre if he was ever asked to do that. I've said repeatedly that I don't feel like Tre'Davious White projects well as a safety. He's never been a guy that tackles particularly well or, really wants to fit the run. Now you're talking about deep alignments, having to trigger downhill and run the alley and tackle. I just don't feel like that's Tre White's game. When Tre White was asked about his role, when he was asked probably 2 or 3 different times about, expectations for what his role is going to be. And Tre really never got into, I came here to start. He said, I'm here to try to win. I'm here to try to win a Super Bowl. That's the only goal. Mentally and physically, I'm great. The past is in the past. I want to showcase my talents to the best of my ability. I think that generally this move was made with some level of hope, at least, that Tre White will be the starter opposite of Christian Benford. And obviously he's got to prove that he's the worthy option. Now, I think anyone that's followed Tre White this past year knows that he did get better as the season moved along. And where's he at right now? We don't know. We'll find out. But it certainly feels like he's putting his best foot forward to come in and help this football team. And if that's as a starter, then that's as a starter. He's going to have that opportunity. And if he can go, he'll go. And if there's a better option, the better option will play. But I'm pretty fascinated to see how this works out. And I'm certainly rooting for Tre White. I mean, how could you not be rooting for Tre White? A+ dude. Premier player in the league for a nice stretch in Buffalo. Man, it would be awesome if he could find his game and be the guy opposite of Christian Benford, and that be something that, when we look back on it, we're happy happened. Speaking of playing opposite of Christian Benford, Tre'Davious White spoke for a good solid minute about Christian Benford and said he's a dog. Genuinely proud and happy for him. Said he was fighting the odds as a 6th-round pick, especially with a 1st-round pick at the same position in the same year. Said he's a complete cornerback. He's always in the right spots. He tackles. He takes the ball away. And he said he could tell that he was ahead of the curve when he came in as a rookie with the playbook and technique. And Christian Benford, guy's a good football player. Good football player. And it'd be cool to see him and Tre White be a good tandem. But obviously, Tre White's the one that's going to have to prove that, and he'll have the opportunity to do it. And obviously, we'll see how the Bills build out the rest of the room and when they make a pick at corner and who it is and how it all comes together. We'll certainly break that down for you in the coming days as the Bills make selections. All right, on the other side of it, Josh Allen met with the media, and he spoke on a few things that are very fascinating to me. First of all, what he's been working on, and also some comments about Keon Coleman. Looking forward to breaking that down for you next. Be sure to stick with me. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscriber sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. You dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all in your Fire TV. Plus, the entertainment options are endless. With 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services such as Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, folks, let's talk about what Josh Allen talked about. And he always gets asked the question, what have you been working on? And, what he's been up to in the offseason. And it's interesting, he said his body felt better than it ever has coming out of a season, and talked about, hey, I was the least sacked quarterback in the NFL. And said he didn't need as much time, like rest and downtime, and said he kind of got back into it a little bit quicker than he normally would, which I thought was interesting. In particular, as to what he's working on, this is what he said. Pre-snap. Working on pre-snap stuff. Wants to identify better what he's seeing, improving footwork with routes and combinations, setting protections, getting his eyes in the right spot, and then having the appropriate footwork. It's kind of stuff you want to hear. We've graduated past a lot of elementary level stuff, right? Josh Allen can obviously do anything he wants on a football field. And, he's entering his age 29 season. This is the stuff I want him to be talking about. Pre-snap. Getting his eyes in the right spot. Footwork. Setting protections. Right? Those are the margins that are the stuff that he can actually improve upon. Of course, there's chemistry and timing and all that stuff. That's always going to be a work in progress as things change around him. But I loved hearing that answer. Now, I thought the biggest issue that Josh Allen had last year was deep ball accuracy. And so I'm hopeful that we see that come together this year. And I think part of this can go hand in hand. You set the protections right. Your eyes are in the right place. Your footwork is complementing the route combinations. You're going to be in a better rhythm to execute those throws at a higher level. But it's nice to know that for Josh, it's mental stuff. And, that's going to be the part that's going to sustain Josh, right? Still in his physical prime, unbelievable athlete, arm talents off the charts. Father time's undefeated. Eventually that stuff is going to diminish. And what's going to keep Josh going is between the ears, Think about Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning and Josh Allen are two very, very different quarterbacks. But Peyton Manning, when the physical decline happened, and you know what I'm talking about. If you watch late stage Peyton Manning, it was tough to watch. But he became such a high-level anticipatory thrower that for all the physical decline that happened, and the arm went, it. That ball was lollipopping, right? Was so smart he can get the ball, make spot throws, and win football games. And I don't think Josh Allen's is ever going to decline to the level that Peyton Manning got to. But hey, as you do lose some of the movement skills, a little bit of that arm talent, between the ears is what's going to keep you going. And so I love that Josh is talking about this. Josh was asked an interesting question about James Cook and, in particular, Josh's role as a leader on the team and how he deals with, a situation like this. And he said, look, guys in the locker room understand the business side. Josh said, I'm not the GM. I'm not the coach. I wear a lot of hats, but those are not any of them. And he says he hopes that it gets figured out. Thought that was a good answer. What are you going to insert yourself into that? That's not a spot that Josh needs to be commenting. I thought he handled that well. On getting a chance to work with Josh Palmer, he said he's excited, said he's a fluid route runner, a separator, mentioned the advanced stats that show that. Certainly been talking a lot about that. Said he has a great personality and will fit in great. But this is the part that was most interesting to me about what Josh Allen said, and it was about Keon Coleman. And said they continue to get reps, get on the same page, work on body language. Said he received a couple of long texts from Keon Coleman this offseason expressing a desire to be better in year 2. And this is the part that's really interesting to me. He said that Keon Coleman has added weight. And I think that Josh Allen said that as if it's a good thing. I'm not sure it is. I'm not exactly sure that it is. Keon Coleman is like a 215-pound receiver. I've never looked at him and thought, you know what? You can use some more mass. I never really thought that. And, he ran a 4.61 40. Nobody's ever watched Keon Coleman and thought to yourself, man, that guy's explosive. Well, as you add weight, you're probably not going to become more explosive. You're going to probably become a little less explosive. Now, he's young, right? He's 21 years old. So there's probably some physical development still happening for Keon Coleman. But, boy, I'd hate for this guy to add mass at the expense of explosiveness. He didn't have much to lose. So that's concerning. Now, James Cook, I think, is an example of a guy that bulked up. I think James added some bulk last year, and I thought he was plenty athletic, right? I thought the explosiveness was just fine with James Cook. But James Cook was also not a super big back to begin with and was explosive always. Now you're already big and slow, and now you're going to become bigger and slower? I don't know. You're over 6'3", 215 pounds to begin with. Do you need to get to 220? Now, this is the other side of it. There's not a lot of receivers that are massive and slow that were very good. But if there is one of them that was, it's Anquan Boldin. And Anquan Boldin is a Florida State alumni, just like Keon Coleman is a Florida State alumni. And maybe he's just going full Anquan Boldin. Now, Anquan Boldin was, 216 and ran 4.72. But if you're gonna embrace, hey, just physicality, bully ball, power type player, then okay, I guess that's the route that we're going. Surely this was part of the plan, right? I mean, it's not like Keon Coleman independently decided this offseason, you know what I need to do? Add mass. Certainly in his exit meetings with the strength staff, Sean McDermott, Beane, they had a conversation and said, hey, this is where we want you to focus. This is what you need to be working on. And certainly they had to come to some understanding that he should bulk up and add weight. But I am curious now that this information's out there, if McDermott or Beane is asked about it, what they say. This is something I'm definitely going to be paying attention to is, year 2 Keon Coleman is something I think everyone's fascinated to see how it unfolds. But what we know right now about year 2 of Keon Coleman is he's added weight. Very interesting. Very interesting. And so we'll see how it plays out. And again, I'm very curious to see or listen to Beane or McDermott when they're asked about this and what the angle is and what the talking points are. So we will certainly be monitoring that. All right, folks, we are getting close. 2025 NFL draft is coming. And so excited for all the content that is going to be coming, all the different places that I produce content. I'm going to be busy. So if you go to my X account, you will see I posted a graphic of all the different content that is coming from me Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There's a lot. And I'm excited. I get to talk specifically on the Bills. And of course, I do league-wide stuff with First Read and Locked On NFL Scouting. So plenty of analysis coming to get through this draft. I hope that you'll come along for the ride. Again, go to my X account at the Joe Marino. I posted a graphic that has all the different content that I'm doing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And there's a lot. And so I hope that you will consume as much of it as your heart's desire. All right, folks, that's it for today. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.